I done did some shit that you ain't never did. I done saw some shit that you ain't never seen. I done been some places you ain't never been. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. Four nigga with a 30 clip, big Glock 9 with a red beam. I done been broke, I done had money, I done had shoes, I was another team. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. Four nigga with a 30 clip, big Glock 9 with a red beam. I done been broke, I done had money, I done had shoes, I was another team. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't saw before. Spurred a nigga in the job before. Took off running from the law before. I was selling OG by the dollar store. Used to get that Reggie from Hilario. That was middle school, like in 6th grade. I was cutting the Philly with a switchblade. I knew I was destined for a big play. I knew I was destined for a mixtape. I been kicking flavor since the talent show. Had a fully loaded automatic flow. What's a fully loaded automatic flow? When I spit the verses like a calico. Watch me spit the verse like a calico. Run and let your mama and your daddy know. 7 shots. I am something to run and tell about. They thought I was smoking airplane gas, cause I'm jumping fly in the helicopter. 800 for the Louis shades up in North Park just to look smart. Money caller with the T-top on the lawn horse and the push start. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. Four nigga with a 30 clip, big Glock 9 with a red beam. I done been broke, I done had money, I done had shoes, I was the other team. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. Four nigga with a 30 clip, big Glock 9 with a red beam. I done been broke, I done had money, I done had shoes, I was the other team.
Really fuck, nigga. No man, give it up, nigga. Shot it out, let it bust, hit him. Did it all for a check killer. I was broke, I was sick. Digging licks in the brick with a stick. Have a split, serving nicks to a zip. Take a trip. 30 big boys in a big clip. Out of town, serving at the quick trip. Ain't no hoe, ain't no hoe. This fofo, gon' blow. My grind big, you a small joke. I'm still into that mud. That wet dirt, give a fuck. I did the most in these damn streets. Having news in these back streets. Ain't no nigga real like me. Hard time made a stiff G. Serving 80s just to eat. Mama called it cause the work cheap. Sucker niggas wanna murk me. Had to get it, had to go see. Let these niggas know it ain't peace. I'm a damn fool if you want these.
I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. Four nigga with a 30 clip, big Glock 9 with a red beam. I done been broke, I done had money, I done had shoes, I was the other team. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. Four nigga with a 30 clip, big Glock 9 with a red beam. I done been broke, I done had money, I done had shoes, I was the other team.
Whoa. The fat crib. Okay. It's clown free shit. MMG shit. Yeah. I'm the same nigga. 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 I'm the same nigga, same old street nigga. I'm the same nigga, same old trap nigga. I'm the same nigga, same old Mac nigga. I'm the same nigga, pouring in mad nigga. Yeah, serve a nigga that fits. In the hood with a stick. Mindset get rich. On cuz that's it. I was working that scale. Really beating that pot. In the hood with that drop. Trying to ride me a drop. Selling work in my socks. Get the dough with my Glock. Pop a nigga through the peephole. Now that funny shit can get stopped. Hey, niggas know about the kid now. Yeah, niggas know you get stick down. SK hold 3 now. That 3 harm get sweet down. Ballin', bustin' fucking all these niggas hold now. Trust me, I'm clutching. Racked up in the geek now. Same nigga you hatin' on be the same nigga with your bitch house. Drunk and fucking your bitch mouth. Beatin' it down on your bitch house. I'm the same nigga. I'm the same nigga. I'm the same nigga. I'm the same nigga.
rounds, sell a dope. Move 100,000 chopaholic. Muscle gang, Lex, Luger, 10 shooters in a Uber. Pull up on your baby mama, pussy nigga. Same time, I'ma roll it, though the time wrong. Same block, niggas grind on. Same light, niggas shine on. I'm the same nigga with the Range Rover, ride dirty while the 12 rollers. Cans action from the baking soda. I was cooking up the Coca-Cola. Fiends, how you dabbing for that check? Trap booming, I ain't missing yet. Same nigga from the same hood. Same gang got a Hollywood. Catching plays, I been running routes. 5 years, I'm gon' run it south. Ain't no secret, bitch, I'm in and out. Buying wings, stopping Waffle House. Told stores, taking money back. Kill them hundreds like a psychopath. Same nigga with a lot of cash. Same nigga with the same rags.
I'm the same nigga, I'm the same nigga, same nigga. I'm the same nigga, I'm the same nigga, same nigga. I'm the same nigga, I'm the same nigga, same nigga. I'm the same nigga, I'm the same nigga, same nigga. I'm the same nigga, same old street nigga. I'm the same nigga, same old trap nigga. I'm the same nigga, same old Mac nigga. I'm the same nigga, blowing in your head nigga. Yeah.
We Japanese still. You getting cooked in front of your family like a Japanese meal. It's y'all shoot the hibachi and none of you niggas can stop me, but can't help but watch me. You know what's funny, bro? The funny thing is, Garfield them had them videos. They did those lives this week, and I can't go access those lives. But they went on there and talked shit about Remy Iona, which, again, I'm not an apologist for. Remy Iona, that's what your ass get. They talk shit about the guy that's in charge of the bed den, or the sock bin, whatever you call it, that released the video that Igbos are actually Jews or Israelites or what have you, or released the decision to recognize them as Jews. They talk shit about him. But guess what you can't find on YouTube? Those lives where they were talking shit about their guests. And it's so funny. It's so funny to me. Because I was going to go back and go let y'all hear what Jungle Brother did. He inspired this video today. And he's lucky that I was too tired. I had to take a little quick nap, man. Adulting. But we was going to deal with this topic today. And I wanted to play the words of Jungle nigga. You know, he calls himself the Jungle Brother, aka True Story. Your ass, I promise you, man, if memory serves me correctly, you've been on my channel and your haplogroup was I. You have the same haplogroup or macro haplogroup as Nas the rapper. And you came on and tried to defend Nas, talking about, so you know Nas is family, he's black, whatever. I remember that shit, bro. And now you talking about some Jungle Brother shit? Nigga, you from Germany, nigga. You from fucking Scandinavia. Fuck is you niggas talk about? Y'all be false claiming West Coast of Africa. My ancestry was really there. You niggas fake as fuck, bro. Y'all fall. And then y'all want to bring up this narrative that people don't love themselves, that they try to attach us. Motherfucker, we related to Jews. Get over it. The Yap markers are amongst the Jews. We Yap, man. Yap is huge. Yap is DE, the entire phylogeograph, the entire phylogeny of DE downstream. That's what sets us apart from other human groups. But what's funny is I can't even go to those clips because those clips are damning. The first thing Garfield does is take these clips off of YouTube so no one can review the bullshit that they do. So you want to talk the shit, but don't want to leave it up there so people can, analyze it. But anyway, in the video, Jungle Nigga, he got on there and basically said that African Americans are just a bunch of jungle niggas and our culture is a bunch of jungle culture. So when I heard that, that scientific mind activate, and I'm like, listen, who are the jungle people or the forest people, really? Who are these people in West Africa? What is their genetic history? What does their DNA look like? We already know what this is. This is, modern racism. And there's another video I want to cover. This East Indian woman interviewed a geneticist. It was a beautiful video. Sean actually shared that video with me. We might cover it this weekend. And she says there's a resurgence of this race science shit going around. And she's not lying. Because you got people like Jungle Nigga, a.k.a. Jungle Brother, a.k.a. Truth Historian or Truth Historian, how to say your fucking name, nigga. Going around telling black people of America, even though he is a descendant of Europeans, telling them that they got a jungle culture and they jungle niggas that play on a jungle gym and drink jungle juice. You niggas is crazy, man. Be that as it may, I can't play the clip of him saying those things, but you know, you just gonna have to take my word for it. The people that watch the live, they know what's up. I can't keep up with all y'all lives, man. Y'all, Garfield, a stay-at-home mom, he can make videos after video. I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Shit, I'm just lucky to be able to make this video tonight. I just woke up, you know, tired, man. I put in work all week trying to get y'all these lives, man, after hours. So, yeah, I can't keep up and download shit and try to catch them in the act. Y'all lucky I can't do that, but you had Jungle Nigga on there being foul and trying to demarcate African Americans' ancestry. Listen here, nigga. African Americans are a diverse group, right? And this is why I love genetics so much, because it reveals and unlocks that. You guys are still on some 18th, 17th century, Blumenbach shit. It's 2023, and you got niggas still going around trying to promulgate a message of static peoples, unchanging peoples. We read the article yesterday, and they ended it with a bomb. You can't say that West Africa is unchanged because of all of the genetic admixture that we see in its peoples. You just can't say that. We can see through the genome that they have a history, a migratory history. And what's so unique about that, and what's so eye-opening about that, is these same niggas, they ain't no different than it was 10 years ago. Y'all could do it. You know about me doing your background check. IUIC, I was a full-fledged cult member and on the streets and on the internet, whatever, boom, boom. These niggas the same as they was. I actually had growth, you know what I'm saying, to get where I'm at. I used to say things like West African oral testimonies are all bullshit. So when you have certain West African tribes say they had an external origin, they would say that's just bullshit and they're only doing that because the Abrahamic faith or the white man or the invaders came in. No, their genetics show that they have external origins from the Western Central Africa. Their DNA shows that they are not an isolated people. The genetic papers are saying these things. So maybe there's some credence to the things these people have been saying and passing down for the oral testimony, which you niggas poo-poo on because you hate those people. And a lot of you people, a lot of you niggas that's talking shit about West Africans ain't even fucking West Africans. You fucking Irish, Scandinavian nigga and blackface. Fuck is wrong with you? Hope it rain on your ass, man. That shit is goofy as fuck. When we looking at the DNA and then we analyzing what these niggas say, there's a huge discrepancy. There's a huge discrepancy. We can't claim our lineage because you're too much of a fucking racist. When you think of West Africa, you think of jungles and you think of people swinging in trees and living in fucking forests. God damn, that's all you can relegate West Africans to, you bitch ass nigga? You's a goofy, bruh. This is how goofy. And again, if you close your eyes, or not even close your eyes, because we hide behind these profile pics nowadays, right? Everybody got profile pics, right? I got my hibachi up right now. It's about to be a hibachi grill tonight. You know what I'm saying? Late night. And y'all got me breaking the Sabbath because I'm cooking on the Sabbath. You know what I'm saying? I'm heating some shit up on the Sabbath. You know what I'm saying? It's like y'all stuck on stupidity and idiocy. And like I said, what is the difference between your talking points and the talking points of Ernest Cox, Walter Plecker, and Woodrow Wilson? Or the old dude who wrote the book Negro as a Beast. Y'all got the same exact talking points as them. Niggas ain't never done shit. They ain't got no ancestry. They're stagnant people, unchanging people. And pretty much they wasn't doing anything until the time of the slave trade. That's why I love the field of genetics, man. That's why I use a lot of my free time, a lot of my SS cash to go buy books, buy articles, so I can learn more and more and more. Because these geneticists are unlocking our history. These Africanists, these online Wi-Fi Africanists, they don't think nothing of your ancestry. They think you are just a bunch of fucking jungle niggas. And that's why it's pertinent that we bring out this history here about Pygmies and booties and early West Africans, because these niggas are not going to teach you this shit. They got an agenda to set. The pro-black agenda is the worst fucking agenda, because it's all about proving 17th and 18th century racists right. When we look at our ancestry is diverse. You had some idiot talking about, y'all just want to connect to white people to feel special. No, I'm connected to white people because that's in my genomes, dummy. Dumb motherfucker. Skin color and ancestry don't go hand in hand. You can have people with several different phenotypic expressions and physical traits all go back to the same common ancestry. Goof troop. You know, and then these niggas talk about culture. Shut the fuck up. You are Americanized Negro. You are Americana. We all Americana. What are you talking about culture, nigga? If you go off culture, you ain't shit but an American. And ain't nothing wrong with that. I'm a proud American. You niggas hate being American so much, but you won't take your ass out this country and stop eating off my fucking taxes. Most of you motherfuckers don't even work. Most of you niggas is sorry as fuck and probably live off a woman. You know what I'm saying? If you in New York in that Democratic state, most of you guys forced to live off the goddamn system. Because how hard it is up there. And if you don't get your shit together at an early age, your ass going to be stuck. You got the nerve to diss America and shit, but you living off fucking America. Get your goofy ass out of here, man. You niggas is goofy as fuck, bro. Take your ass to Korea, see how that work out. Fuck wrong with you? Yeah, really got me cooking on the Sabbath, man. Breaking the commandment. You know what I'm saying? Fuck it. At the Maccabees, they said we you know, they tried to attack them on the Sabbath. Said, listen, we ain't gonna die on the Sabbath. Niggas gonna get their heads chopped off on the Sabbath. It is what it is. You know. But man, I really wish I had that clip. I know them niggas is busters. Y'all already knew that though. What's new, man? So I'm gonna open up this video with this article here. And I'm gonna say this before I start. Science.org, I'm gonna cancel my silver membership with y'all because y'all on some bullshit. Y'all really on some bullshit. Y'all really gonna name the article about the Pygmies. You know, some cornball shit. A short history of African Pygmies. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Chris Rock, because he actually does have a downstream claim of haplogroup B. We're not Pygmies. But you got truth historian goofy ass trying to make all of the African diaspora, all African Americans, forest people and Pygmies and shit. You know they're gonna deny this. I never. Yes, you did, nigga. Just the video clip ain't out there, you dumbass nigga. Y'all like doing shit like that, right? But this is who he's trying to say we all come from. Let me show you. Let me make that a little smaller. A group of Pygmies, right? The Mbuti Pygmies. But they also bullshit with this a short history of African Pygmies. Shut your goofy. You niggas better get y'all goofy Donald and Mickey head ass up out of here, man. What's wrong with y'all? Shit. Anyway, this is an old article. It was written in 2009 by Ann Givens. Shout out to Ann Givens. She's been in the game for a while, man. But let me blow this up a little bit. I want y'all to see that image. It's kind of distorted because I got the screen and text very large. But a short history of African pygmies, diverse people inherited their stature from the same recent ancestors. Now, you can see the depiction of the pygmies. This is how Jungle Nigga views every West African history. Like this. This is how we all lived. You know, even there's no Sahelian. There are no people living in the desert. They lived all in the forest. No sophisticated nothing. This is what he said. Our jungle culture. Speak for yourself, you whole ass nigga. Let's go down. Get offended. Click off. Unsubscribe. Go subscribe to them niggas shit. And keep reminding y'all that. Nobody wants you here. Shit. Short people known as pygmies are scattered across equatorial Africa, where they speak various languages and have different types of forces and hunt and gather food in diverse ways. So this is what this nigga was trying to put on all of West Africans and the African diaspora. Everybody's like this, y'all. We all got a jungle fucking culture, you know, and that's the mind of a communist, right? The mind of a communist, this groupthink shit. If you think it, then we all got to think it. And, you know, there is no differences between the community. We all the same. We all got the same origin. No bullshit, nigga. You's a fucking European descendant. And you trying to put this damn lineage on us, just like they were doing in the past. You're just like your fucking fathers, man. You're a product of a Scandinavian, probably, man. You spreading that same doctrine that was sponsored by European colonialism and slavery, like my man Mutaser said. It's the same shit. Static population, unchanging populations, saying that all of them have to have the same culture. You're saying the same goddamn thing. It's up to Yap to come out and give people a clear glass of fucking water. Oh, you gotta believe the Israelites. Fuck that shit. Don't even, okay, you can say whatever you want to say about that. I don't give a fuck. You're not finna sit up here and try to take diversity from West Africans. You're not doing that. That's why y'all won't jump your silly asses in the ring and debate. You won't debate this shit. You have built an environment for, we're talking to Garfield and his constituents, where all y'all got to do in Sonetta, all y'all got to do is go on there and say shit. There is no making it concrete. There is no process of proving it. There is no methodology. All you got to do is go out there and say, we got a jungle culture. And that's it. It's just like church. Preach means to proclaim. You just proclaim the shit. And I keep saying this, proclamation is not affirmation. You cannot prove that all of the African diaspora are all people that are listed under the African American ethnic group. Descend from these people. It's actually a rare fucking haplogroup amongst African American descendants. But you don't want to teach genetics because genetics cracks all that shit wide open. Racism cannot exist when you understand genetics. That's why the BHIs is upset. These Afrocentrics is upset. All you niggas is upset because you cannot run the same playbook. You understand? You cannot run scientific racist playbook with this. You cannot run Blumenbach's playbook or Linnaeus's playbook with this. With genetics, you can't run that playbook. It does not work. No, we're not all the goddamn same, man. You niggas won't be honest about the slave trade. There was more African slave traders than anything else. You won't be honest about that shit because you got to keep making this false dichotomy that everything is a white versus black or us versus them. First of all, you ain't even established us. Nigga, you European. What are you even talking about our ancestry for? Go fucking learn about Scottish rights or Scottish history or some shit. Scandinavian fucking. You want me to do a video about your peoples, man? And break down your fucking ancestry to you? Where the fuck you come from? Why you trying to put this forest label on all fucking African Americans, you piece of shit? There's a whole bunch of goofy goobers over there, man. And none of you niggas will jump your ass in the scholastic ring. None of you fucking niggas will do it. Y'all debate dumbass shit all the time. It's the laws of the Most High evil. Okay, they're evil. Now let's move on to this right here. Let's move on to these claims that you fucking making. Play some goddamn defense sometimes. Y'all not gonna do it because you know the shit you say, the shit that come out your mouth could not be substantiated. That's why I said, what's the difference between these dudes and what Dylan Roof was saying? Go back and watch that FBI interview of Dylan Roof or Dylan Roof and see where he got his ideology from, Stormfront and all that other bullshit. And then compare and contrast with what these hardcore Afrocentrics and pro-black niggas and BHI say. The shit sound like the same. The shit is cohesive as fuck. What is the difference? Short people known as Pygmies are scattered across equatorial Africa where they speak various languages, inhabit different types of forests, and hunt and gather food in diverse ways. News flash Garfieldites and fucking truth historian and whatever the fuck dude's name is. Jungle brother, jungle this, jungle that. We not these people, man. You have no proof that we are these people. Despite their cultural variety, a new study shows that the Pygmies of Western Central Africa descended from an ancestral population that survived intact until 2,800 years ago when farmers invaded the Pygmies' territory and split them apart. A lot of y'all love calling everybody else invaders. Who are them invaders? Those my ancestors did that. EU 290, EU 175. We know for that. That's my ancestry who did that. Went over there, smoked them niggas. You know what I'm saying? Took their land, subjugated them, and took their women. You know what I'm saying? That's what happened, bro. The evidence points towards that. And that's why I always say this right here. It ain't about convincing you fucking idiots. You niggas gonna die idiots. You're gonna die being a pro-black racist motherfucker. Right? You're gonna die doing that shit. But a new scientific truth is usually not propagated in such a way that opponents become convinced. This ain't about convincing no goddamn body, man. And discard their previous views. No, the adversaries eventually die off, and the upcoming generation is familiarized anew with the truth. So we're just trying to get people familiar. It can be one or two people, you understand? It can be 3 or 4 people, right? As long as somebody is getting familiar with it and they're able to pass the information down to the subsequent generations so they're familiar with it, so they can have a defense against these racist ass groups. These black neo-Nazis that has inundated this space. So we don't give a damn about who gives a fuck if you get convinced. I don't give a fuck about none of that. That's why I'm like looking at certain people with the side eye. I'm like, yo, what the fuck do you keep going over to a person that keep telling you ain't shit? I like these women, these battered women, right? that keep going back into the abusive relationship. The nigga put knots on your head, nigga stealing your money, you know what I'm saying? Nigga embarrassing you at your job, and you go right back to him. A lot of you niggas go back on these niggas' platforms after they disrespect the fuck out of you. It was one brother, they showed, like, first of all, ain't nothing wrong with interracial marriage. But again, in this community, this fucked up, racist ass, hillbilly, redneck ass community, they got a problem with that. So what they do on Side TV, and Lord of my witness, they showed this man's wife, showed him pictures of him and his wife, humiliated him and his wife. Don't you know the nigga I'm talking about is back on that nigga channel? I wish a nigga would. I'm coming to fucking New York. Niggas got me fucked up. Coming to New York, nigga. But what y'all silly ass niggas do? You took your dumb ass back over there. That's why I don't feel sorry for y'all. I don't throw no pity party for none of y'all. That's what your ass get. If a motherfucker do you like that and you bring your little silly ass back on their channel after they disrespected you and your household, your wife, the mother of your fucking children, that's what your ass get. That's why when JJ brought his silly ass on my channel talking about some, we don't get a first shake on side. I don't give a fuck. What they got to do with me, nigga? Y'all make the choice to click y'all ass. Is y'all getting forced over there, nigga? You getting coerced? No. You make the conscious decision to sit your ass on that channel and get tomatoes thrown at you the whole goddamn time. I was supposed to pity party and rally and, oh yeah, you right, but let me go. Hell no, nigga. That's your choice. You decided to be humiliated. Fuck wrong with y'all. And I got to talk to y'all like that because nobody else is. Everybody else is coddling y'all. Everybody else is pretty much coddling y'all and your stupidity. And that's why every year is the same shit with this fucked up ass community. Motherfucker give you a whole goddamn police activity and records and your back. We know your background check and everything through watching these people. And you walk your silly ass right back on the channel. Have some kind of integrity. God damn. Don't put the man, wife and shit out there, man. And that was just distasteful as fuck. You understand? The man's wife is of another quote unquote race. That don't mean shit. That's the woman he fell in love with and had babies with. That's the mother of his children. Nobody should have anything to say about it. But when you got a bunch of fucking black rednecks, that's what you expect. That's what you should expect. And last time I checked, the good books say, wipe the dust off your feet and keep it moving. You motherfuckers want to stay there. Want to live there. Want to get permanent residency. Want to apply for citizenship in Redneckville. At the trailer park. That's what you niggas is doing, man. Motherfucker disrespect you, your family, and everything about you, and you walk your dumb ass back over there. Nigga have an entire fucking live berating your ass. And here your goofy ass is back in there. That's why I don't feel sorry for none of you niggas, man. I don't give a fuck, bro. Don't come crying to me. Don't hit my motherfucking phone. Don't hit me up on social media. That's what your ass gets. You know what it's like jungle nigga. You go in there and you see him talking all this bullshit about West Africans. You jump your little goof ass on there, knowing that that's how he feel, that's how he think. You right, LeBron. It's about attention, man. Niggas want to be seen so bad they will drag themselves through the mud to get the viewership. That's why I don't give a fuck about views. Fuck that. I'm not compromising my integrity for you niggas. You got me fucked up. Don't watch me. Like I said, unsubscribe. Go over there and be fucking abused. You fucking masochist. Back to this shit, bro. Somebody got to say the shit because ain't nobody saying it. Right here it says short people known as pygmies are scattered across equatorial Africa where they speak various languages, inhabit different types of forests, and hunt and gather food in diverse ways. Again, this is not the majority of African American ancestry. But you got people on the internet promulgating, and preaching this. And like I said, it sounds like a Klans meeting. It sounds like some shit you would hear in Stormfront. That's what it sounds like they're getting their material from. That's why I said a lot of these pro-black motherfuckers speak the language, the love language of white supremacists. That's why Marcus Garvey got along with known white supremacist Walter Plecker. Sold Ernest Cox books, sold 17,000 copies of it. Happy Black History, by the way. These motherfuckers will never tell you that this man was lockstep with white supremacist ideology. They will never tell you that. But want to shit on the people that got us civil rights. Get the fuck out of here. Want to shit on Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation when he fought to free our damn ancestors. Get the fuck out of here. Want to raise this nigga up on a plateau that push racist ideology. The same ideology that justified them treating us in an ill manner. Justified them calling us jungle niggas like this motherfucker. You want to prop them up and give them all the praise. Kiss my ass. It says, despite their cultural variety, a new study shows that the Pygmies of Western Central Africa descended from an ancestral population that survived intact until 2,800 years ago when farmers invaded the Pygmies' territory and split them apart. Again, we have done many shows detailing the Bantu expansion, what the Bantu expansion entails. They had advanced technology, and they brought in farming so they could support larger groups. The origins of pygmies have long been a mystery. Researchers have debated whether African pygmies inherited their height from a common ancestor they shared long ago, or whether shortness evolved independently in each tribe because it was advantageous for life in the forest. For instance, getting enough calories to grow taller might have been more challenging than in more open terrain. Pygmies grow up just like other modern humans until they become teenagers, when they fail to undergo a final adolescent growth spurt. Although humans have lived in the forests of Western Central Africa for at least 30,000 years, there are no fossils to show whether the ancestral population was short to begin with or whether the trait evolved more recently in different groups. Previous DNA studies haven't resolved the question. So they have a long history in the forests, as you can see, 30,000 years. This has nothing to do with E1B1A. This has nothing to do with E, period. You understand? You do realize we got ancestry in fucking Japan and Southeast Asia and in Arabia and in the Middle East and in some European ancestry and in North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. It's not just Sub-Saharan Africa. Pygmies do not have that. Thank you, New Hope. Somebody getting the message. Ain't that what the good book say? Do not give what is holy to the dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and tear you in pieces. That's exactly what's going on, and I'm seeing it. Remy Iona, all on Facebook, giving sob stories about what took place on Garfield's channel in that after show that they did, dogging him. Well, if you didn't know about the channel, you should have did your background check. Don't go on no damn. You don't go nowhere blindly. You do your research first. But I think that's BS because you've been in contact with Zion Lex. You already know about this spear. You know exactly what goes on. The dude got videos saying destroy the Hebrews like this. Ebo's a line about this. Blah blah blah. You go over there and do an interview, your little silly goofy ass, and then the minute they berate you and tell the audience that you're crazy and don't know what the hell you're talking about, now you want to turn to Facebook and act victim. You're not a victim, dude. You knew exactly. You were complicit. You are complicit in that, bro. In your humiliation. You chose to do that. You didn't have to go over there. That was a conscious choice. No one forced you. You in the United States of America. You are free. Well, I don't know if he still is, but he was at one point. You're free to do as you please, sir. So live and die with the consequences. You went over there and did that, knowing that that's the type of environment over there. And the good book tell you what will happen to your goofy ass, right? So, I said somebody getting the message. It says here, in the largest study of Western Central Africa to date, anthropological geneticist Paul Verdu of the Museum of Man in Paris, and colleagues analyzed DNA from 9 pygmy groups and 12 neighboring groups of people who are of normal height. The researchers report in this week's issue of Current Biology that although the pygmies have a lot of genetic diversity, they probably can trace their ancestry to the same population that could have lived as recently as 2,800 years ago, says Verdu. In the most likely scenario, a small group of short people split off from non-pygmy populations between 50 and 90,000 years ago. The founding group of pygmy ancestors was fairly cohesive, with tribes interbreeding until 2,800 years ago. At that point, taller Bantu-speaking farmers probably swept across Central Africa and pushed them apart. Once the pygmy groups split, they stopped interbreeding. As a result, each group evolved separately. Even today, they seldom know of each other's existence, says Verdu. But he also detected an unusual pattern. More DNA flows from non-pygmy neighbors into pygmy populations than the other way around. This is curious because pygmy women tend to marry non-pygmy men and move to their homes, not vice versa. But these marriages often fail because of discrimination against low-status pygmy wives, Verdu says. And the pygmy women return to their pygmy groups with children who have DNA of their taller fathers. So this is what the Bantu, this is what they're doing today. And they done this in the past, right? What they doing today? So the Bantus, man, they got a thing for pygmy women. I don't know what it is. You know what I'm saying? The Bantu get over there, they get in that mood.
Ooh, baby, I gotta get you home with me tonight. Ooh, baby, I gotta get you home with me tonight.
You know what I'm saying? You know, my folks, they can't get enough of that pygmy booty, man. I don't know what else to tell you. You know, as we just read, you know, it's crazy they send them back there with their kids, you know. But hey, that's the world. The world is not marshmallows, rainbows, and cotton candy. It says here the data that the pygmies shared a recent ancestor, however, are convincing because they genotype an impressive number of pygmies from Western Central Africa, says molecular anthropologist Sarah Tiskoff of the University of Pennsylvania. Now, says Tiskoff, the next step is to figure out if East African pygmies are also descended from the same ancestral population. So, yeah, so obviously we are not these people. We're more related to the Bantus that took over these people, you know. But again, these redneck pygmies, they just all you gotta do is be black, and then you consider the same. That's racist as hell, but that's what they're teaching these redneck people, man. Redneck blacks, rednecks in blackface. So with that, let's move on to the next article here. So let me go to ISOG, They did their article in 2016 on haplogroup B, which is a known haplogroup of the pygmy. So let's read it. Y-DNA haplogroup B, like Y-DNA haplogroup A, is only seen in Africa and scattered widely, but thinly across the continent. B is thought to have arisen approximately 50,000 years ago. These haplogroups have higher frequencies among hunter-gatherer groups in Ethiopia and Sudan, and are also seen among click language-speaking populations. The patchy, widespread distribution of these haplogroups may mean they are the remnants of ancient lineages that once had much wider range, but have been largely displaced by more recent population events. These are your original Western Central Africans, by the way. These are your original sub-Saharan Western Central African populations. These B and A markers. We keep repeating that. That's what the science is telling you. And let me give you the article that we just read, because, pardon me, man. I'm trying to keep up with that so you guys can have every article. This is the science article we just read. And then I'm gonna give you the ISOG. So boom, y'all should have that in the chat now. You got access to it. A short history of the African pygmies. Diverse people inherited their stature from the same recent ancestors. Here you go. Boom. It's in the chat. And now we're dealing with ISOG. I'll give you the link to this as well. You know, so you can have that ammunition, man. There you go. Boom. This is the Y-DNA haplogroup B in the subclades 2016. It's funny. Some people, he's quoting the ISOG. Do you know what ISOG stands for, you slow son of a gun? Oh, anyway. Let's read it again. It says here, the patchy, widespread distribution of these haplogroups may mean they are remnants of ancient lineages that once had a much wider range, but have been largely displaced by more recent population events. People were displacing these groups. You know, in particular, people with the YAP marker, downstream clades of E, were displacing these people, showing you that we're not the original people of sub-Saharan Western Central Africa. We're not the original. That's becoming more and more abundantly true, you know, and evident. Kedrick, you funny as hell, bro. He gonna talk about some pygmy women knew their role. I know Kedrick was one of them dudes that was up there all up in the pygmy ear talking about some.
Ooh, baby, I gotta get you home with me tonight. Ooh, baby, I gotta get you home with me tonight.
Kedrick, you use a super free. We know what ancestral line you came from. But in all seriousness, when you look at this, these represent your autochthonous Africans, your Paleo Africans. That's why in our biblical model, we overlay the biblical model with the phylogenetic tree. We match these people up with the descendants of Ham, you know, and we match DE with the descendants of Shem, your original Middle Eastern, Near Eastern, Levantine, and North African groups, right? And then the European related peoples, of course, will be Jaffa. It's a very simple model. You know, it's our hypothesis, our inferences based on the data. That's all it is. But anyway, it says some geographic structuring is seen between the subgroups B2A and B2B. Subgroup B2B is seen among Central African Pygmies and South African Khoisan. Subgroup B2A is seen among Cameroonians, East Africans, and among South African Bantu speakers. B2A1A is the most commonly seen subgroup of B2A. About 2.3% of African Americans belong to B, but 1.5% of them belong to the subgroup B2A1A. You see that? So not all African Americans have a jungle culture. All, you know, we don't all come from and hail from the forests, you know, the forest regions of, you know, we don't come from that. Only 2.3% of us is minuscule, very small. descend from haplogroup B like Brother Chris Rock does. You know, they don't make you less than or anything. It's just it's ostensible. It's a fact. Only a small percentage of us actually derive our ancestry from these people. But you try to broad brush all African Americans with these people. What about those like yourself, true historian, who has European ancestry? Like, bro, you go back to fucking Scandinavia somewhere and you talking about West Africans and trying to broad brush them and demarcate them and isolate them. Learn your own history. You want me to do a whole class about your history, your haplogroup, and where that comes from? Do you want me to do that? Because I will. Unlike your constituents. But to this point here, the patchy widespread distribution of these haplogroups may mean that they are the remnants of ancient lineage that once had a much wider range, but have been largely displaced by more recent population events. And a lot of scientists are saying this, as we brought up in the Ancient West African Forages paper by Mark Lipson et al. And the conclusion of that paper, let's see if I can pull it up here in a minute. And the conclusion of that paper, and in the abstract, it says, hey, that these modern populations may not represent ancient populations in sub-Saharan Africa. And he's absolutely correct. And we've been reading the North African papers showing that our ancestry actually derives from the North, not the South. You know, a lot of these papers, man. Got my brother Sean. Hey, Sean, you gonna jump on or what? A lot of these people are dealing with outdated information and just trying to use racial hierarchical systems to you know, determine everything instead of the information. So let me open this up real quick and find this paper here. And then we're going to move on with this discussion on the Pygmies and who derives their ancestry. As you guys just seen, only 2.5% of African Americans even descend from this lineage. Majority of us are different lineages. Some of us do have Western Central African, Yoruba, Igbo, and then you got our Bantu lineages, whatnot. And then some of us have European lineages. A very small percentage of us have Native American lineages, whether matriline or patriline, right? So let me open this again because probably closed it. When you go to the Ancient West African Forages, and I'll put the paper here in the chat. We're not going to read the whole thing. We've already covered it in a prior episode. It was correcting some brothers about the Basal West African. We have a very less than 10% Basal West African component. But those ancient Shulaka remnants had like a 60, I think, what was it, 65%? I think it was 65%, man. So this is the title of this paper. We've covered this paper to ad nauseum at this point. All right, let's go down. So let's read the abstract, and then I'm going to go to, because I'm going off memory here. Then I'm going to go to the discussion. I believe at the end of this paper, they talk about what I reference here and what we just read at ISOC. It says we generated a genome-wide data from 4 children buried roughly 8,000 to 3,000 years ago at Shunlaka, Cameroon, one of the earliest archaeological sites within the probable homeland of Bantu languages. One individual carried the deeply divergent Y chromosome haplogroup A00, which is found today almost exclusively in the same region. However, all 4 individuals' genome-wide ancestry profiles are most similar to West Central African hunter-gatherers, right? Like your Pygmies, right? Your Mbuti, right? And what's interesting about this, go ahead, Sean. You good, bro? What's interesting about this is that we don't see any UMBA markers even in the 3,000 year group that they discovered, right? We just see this hunter-gatherer lineage that's, you know, more related to like Mbuti Pygmies. It says implying that present-day populations in Western Cameroon as well as Bantu speakers across the continent are not descended substantially from the population represented by these 4 people. So what the hell is True Story talking about? And what is jungle madness? We don't descend from these people largely, bro. We don't. Most of our people, most of our male lineage is derived from yap carriers, not these old West African foraging groups. We infer in Africa-wide phylogeny that features widespread admixture of three prominent radiations, including one giving rise to at least four major lineages deep in history of modern humans. So when we go here, let's jump down to, yeah, Sean, yeah, you good, bro. I understand, man. I know how that go. Like I crashed today too, so it is what it is. I can't keep up with you young folks, man. So here's the haplogroups they found: B2B, A00, and a B marker. Those are three males. And L1C, L1C, L1C is known as the female pygmy component of pygmy carriers. L1C. As you can see, they have an ancient present here. And this was 3,000 to look 3,200 to 3,000 in the range, 3,160 to 2,970. And you would expect like at least the male BE1, B1A, but it's not even there during this time. Maybe because Bantu haven't swept through this region yet. A00 and B 8,000 years ago as well. So when we go down to the discussion, I believe it's there. Admixture graph analysis. Radiocarbon dates, A00 split. PCA admixture graphs. Go down, data availability. There's one point from this paper, as we just read, that we do not descend from these people. And we had a group of dilettantes try to say, yeah, we do. No, we don't do. Like, the paper clearly says it. But again, everybody wants to have these esoteric, understandings of everything. The paper can't say what it says. It's got to have some kind of deeper understanding to it. Man. And where is it at? Ancient DNA. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Here. Well, part of this implication of deep African population history. Here it is. Let's see. For West Africa, we find a best fit of source split in the same point as Central Africans. Let's see. By analyzing data from Shumlaka and other ancient individuals in conjunction with present-day groups, we gain new insights into African population structure on multiple timescales. First, we infer a series of closely spaced population splits involving West African-related and two East African-related lineages, as well as non-Africans. On the geography of the population involved, the center of this radiation was plausibly East Africa, with a date approximately 80 to 60,000 BP, based on estimated diversion of African and non-African populations. Such an expansion is also consistent with mtDNA phylogeography, specifically diversification of haplogroup L3, likely originating in East Africa, approximately 70,000 BP, potentially with the origins of the clade CT and the Y chromosome tree at a similar depth. Second, we infer a phase of divergences involving at least four lineages early in the history of modern humans. Recent consensus has been that Southern African hunter-gatherers who split from other populations 250 to 200,000 BP represents the deepest sample branch of modern human variation. Real quick, this is why people say, oh, all people come from us. No, those are South African Khoisan. And here's two things need to be true for all people to come for you. You would have to have this deep clade of A or A2-T, right? Because this is not even A2-T. Most other groups branch off A2-T. And then you would have to live 200,000 years ago. Nobody does. All humans, a lot of there are extant populations. We live around the same time. We don't. Nope. All right, I'm back. Yep, I knew it. I knew my internet was acting a little wonky. Anyway, I'm back here. It says recent consensus. We were at that. Other results suggest that Central African hunter-gatherers split at close to the same time, perhaps slightly earlier, and thus that both clades as well as the lineage that will later diversify at point originated as part of a large-scale affiliation. It says, in addition to the well-characterized deep lineages, we also detect at least one deep ghost source contributing to West Africans and East African hunter-gatherers. This signal corroborates previous evidence for Hadza and Sandawi and for West Africans, although we find that the best fit of a source splitting near the same point as Southern Central African hunter-gatherers. Our results are also consistent with previous reports of archaic ancestry in African populations. Specifically in West Africans, the presence of deep ancestry in West African clade is notable in light of the Pleistocene archaeological record, which includes Homo sapiens fossil dates dated to 3000 BP in northwestern Africa, as well as individuals with archaic features buried approximately 12,000 BP in southwestern Nigeria, the oldest known human fossil from West Africa proper. So the oldest known human fossil in Western Central Africa is only 12,000 years, right? Since Middle Stone Age artifacts have also been found in parts of West Africa into the terminal Pleistocene, despite the development of LSA technology elsewhere. For example, Schumacher, thus the available material fossil evidence is concordant with our genetic results, indicating long-term African population structure and admixture. Further genetic studies may reveal additional complexities in deep human population history, while some early human groups will likely remain known only through fossils. Based on our current understanding, the presence of at least 4 modern human lineages that diversify 250 to 200,000 BP and are representing people living today support archaeological evidence that this was a pivotal period for human evolution in Africa. Okay, this is not what I wanted. I know it's in this paper though. Let's see. Oh, here it is right here. It's above this. Linguistic and genetic evidence points to Western Cameroon as the most likely area of development of Bantu languages and as the ultimate source of subsequent migrations of Bantu speakers. And while the regional mid-Holocene archaeological records is sparse, Shumlaka has been highlighted as a possible important site in the early phases of this processes. However, the genetic profiles of our 4 sample individuals, even by 3000 BP, when the spread of Bantu languages and ancestry associated with Bantu-speaking populations was already underway, are very different from those of most Niger-Congo speakers today, implying that these individuals are not representative of the primary source populations ancestral to present-day Bantu speakers. All right? So that's what we see here. That's what we find here. We do not descend from these West African foraging groups. And they would have been originally around in this region. So let's move on from there. Let's go. Let's see. Should I just recapitulate this in here? Yeah, let's go here. So let's go to this paper here. And we're going to deal with the genetic structure of pygmy populations just to reinforce this. And then we're going to move on to another topic. So this is the genetic and demographic implications of the Bantu expansion and sites from human paternal lineages. We'll read the abstract and then give you the breakdown on the genetics of the pygmy. Let me get the title. So you know, if you have half a brain, you know today, like at this point, we've proven that we're not the same people as these fours hunter-gatherer groups, these foragers, right? With this crazy ass guy Garfield talking about some our jungle culture. Get the fuck out of here. So the abstract says the expansion of the Bantu language was started around 5,000 years before present. West Central Africa, spread all throughout sub-Saharan Africa, may represent one of the major and most rapid demographic movements in the history of human species. Although the genetic footprints of this expansion have been unmasked through the analysis of maternally inherited mitochondrial DNA lineages, information on the genetic impact of this massive movement and on the genetic composition of pre-Bantu populations is still scarce. Here we analyze an extensive collection of Y chromosome markers, 41 single nucleotide polymorphisms, and 18 short tandem repeats in 883 individuals from 22 Bantu-speaking agriculturalist populations and 3 pygmy hunter-gatherer populations from Gabon and Cameroon. Our data revealed a recent origin for most paternal lineages in the West Central African population, most likely resulting from the expansion of Bantu-speaking farmers that erased the more ancient White chromosome diversity found in this area. What is the more ancient? A lot of these BM16, the A markers, A00 markers, right? Went through the Bantu expansion, swept through and killed and subjugated a lot of these older Paleo-African groups. It says, however, some traces of ancient paternal lineages are observed in these populations, mainly among hunter-gatherers. Again, this is a very small lineage among African Americans, but you have Jungle Juice, the dude that has jungle fever and works at the jungle gym. This dude here is trying to say we're all these hunter-gatherers, and we're not. These results are at odds with those obtained from mtDNA analysis. Why? Because a lot of those Bantus was down there getting a freak on when they was conquering. That's usually what conquerors do. They come through, kill the man, and take the women. That's usually how it goes. Look at the Yamnaya expansion. They come from Central Asia initially. They expand. They make their way into Anatolia, to Eastern Europe, and then spread into Western Europe, depopulating the males and taking the women. So, everybody was getting a Mac on back then.
Ooh, baby, I gotta get you home with me tonight. Ooh, baby, gotta get you home with me tonight.
Says these results are at odds with those obtained from mtDNA analysis, which they explain because you see L1C amongst these groups, right? This is where high frequencies of ancient maternal lineages are observed, and substantial maternal gene flow from hunter-gatherers to Bantu farmers has been suggested. These differences are most likely explained by socio-cultural factors such as patrolocality. We also find the intriguing presence of paternal lineages belonging to the Eurasian haplogroup R1b1, which might represent footprints of demographic expansions in Central Africa, not directly related to the Bantu expansion. So from there, we're going to go all the way down. This show is not about the Bantu expansion, right? Go all the way down until we get to the Pygmies. Where is that? Genetic structure and population relationships, and then we have Pygmy and Bantu languages. Genetic structure of Pygmy populations. It says the presence of common paternal lineages in Eastern and Western Pygmies is in strong contrast with the completely non-overlapping maternal gene pool of these populations. Eastern Pygmies present L0A2, L2A, and L5 mtDNA lineages, and do not present L1C lineages, which are found in over 90% of Western Pygmies. In contrast, all Pygmy samples here analyzed present paternal B2B frequencies over 25%, reaching 60% in the Western Baka Pygmies. Haplogroup B2B has also been observed in Khoisan samples with some traces of other sub-Saharan populations, pointing toward an ancient origin for this lineage. Again, showing that these were the original people of sub-Saharan Africa in times past. The presence of B2B among Pygmies suggests a common paternal origin for Eastern and Western Pygmies, being at odds with the apparent lack of maternal ancestry depicted by mtDNA analysis. Sexually asymmetric demographic factors could explain this discrepancy observed in maternal-paternal lineages in Pygmies. In addition, the presence of haplogroup E1B1A is very heterogeneous in Pygmy populations, being very frequent in Biakab, Mbuti, and Bakola Pygmies over 40%, and less frequent in 20%. Again, why did this happen? Through admixture, because these people came in, took over, took the women of the Pygmies. Gene flow between Pygmies and non-Pygmies. Our data clearly shows that the paternal gene flow between West Central Bantu farmers and Pygmies has been asymmetrical. Although paternal Bantu lineages have been introduced into Pygmies, the opposite has been rare. The predominant Bantu haplogroup E1B1A has been found at frequencies over 25% in Pygmies, especially in Bakola, and B2A has also been found in Bakola at 18%. By contrast, the predominant Pygmy haplogroup B2B is observed less than 1% of Bantu-speaking agriculturalists. This result is consistent with the hypothesis of asymmetrical gene flow between Pygmies and Bantu farmers due to sex-specific demographic factors. with maternal pygmy to Bantu and paternal Bantu to pygmy flow being the rule. The introduction of paternal Bantu lineages into the pygmy population could have taken place through extramarital unions between pygmy females and Bantu farmer males. Pygmy females being accepted as wives for their great fertility and for their relatively low bride price, through the adoption of orphans from mixed unions and through the return of divorced pygmy women from Bantu farmer males and their children to pygmy communities. This is also corroborated by the analysis of female lineages, where specific pygmy mtDNA haplogroups such as L1C1A have been found in Bantu agriculturalists, whereas the presence of Bantu mtDNA lineages in pygmy populations has been found to be rare. Besides this asymmetrical and opposite gene flow unmatched from parentally inherited groups, it has been shown that there is a substantial common and deep maternal ancestry between Bantu agriculturalists and pygmies for the mtDNA, whereas not such a deep ancestry is found for Y chromosome male lineages. So again, the Y chromosome male lineages, E1B1A does not have as deep of an ancestry as these B2B markers, these pygmy markers. Mitochondrial L1C lineage is prevalent in West Central Africa and found in both groups have been dated back to 70,000 years, suggesting a common ancient origin for Bantu agriculturists and pygmies. In contrast, the common paternal lineages found in West Central African samples are essentially recent. Only traces of haplogroup A and basal EM96 are found in both groups, but these haplogroups only account for 5%, 10% respectively in pygmies and 0.5 and 1% in Bantu agriculturalists. The lack of ancient paternal lineages among West Central Africa suggests that the Bantu expansion erased most of ancient diversity present in the region before the massive demic expansion. In addition, these results clearly indicate that the consequences of the Bantu expansion are more visible from the paternal side than from the maternal side. Again, they come in, they erase the original people there, these forest people, right? They erase a lot of their lineages, they reduce their numbers, and then they become dominant, suggesting that the demic movements associated with the Bantu expansion involve more males than females. Sex-specific gene flow can be directly estimated from the genome regions that unilaterally transmitted. General and more accurate estimate of sex-independent admixture can be derived from autosomal markers such as those recently published. And that's what we keep telling y'all. You can tell who you mix with by your autosomes. Autosome shows admixture. That's how we picked up a lot of the basal African component because they had it, and we picked it up through them by having sex with their women, reproducing with their women, and creating a progeny. So that's that paper there. You guys have the paper. I just wanted to cover that. Let me see if I can quickly get the AGVP paper. Then we're going to move on to the next segment, which is West African ancient genetic matrices, right? And what we're going to do with that is deal with an article I've been wanting to cover for a while here. Very interesting article. Let me pull up the AGVP. African Genome Variation Project. And there's one sentence I want to get out of here. There it is, African Genome Variation Project on Nature. And here's the paper here. Anybody can get this paper. You know, we ain't got no secret voodoo sources here. This ain't no, we ain't no Rosicrucians here. Secret government documents. Like Joe Biden hiding government documents in his house. This ain't that. You know what I'm saying? That's classified. No, man, this is all open stuff. So when you go to this paper, I want you guys to go down to the supplementary. And download. Dang, somebody outside active today, man. So the discussion. I want you guys to get the supplementary. Let's see if I can find it. Let me hard search it real quick, y'all. Real quick before we move on from the real jungle peoples, right? There he is. Supplementary information. Should be a PDF file. So you download that. And then once you download it, you should see this pop up on your screen, right? And what we want to go to, sorry, search it. It's under the Igbo section. So recent populations. Let's see. Populations. Let me get it real quick because it's not helping me. So hold on. So there's a portion here. Let me go down. It should be under the um, estimated hunter gatherer, estimated Eurasian right here, page 62. So let's go there. 62. And it's around a section that talks about the rock art. The rock art amongst these ancient sub-Saharan Africans. Let's see if I can find it here. And it's under the segment of the Igbo when they're dealing with the Eurasian DNA there. Well, I want to get this all impromptu, y'all, so bear with me. I want to get this. I want to share this with y'all. Right here. So, page 81 of the, or 82 rather, of the supplemental file. It says here, although our analysis suggests that modern-day Khoisan population may be the closest representative to admixing hunter-gatherer ancestry Igbo, there is no historical evidence that Khoisan-like population existed in this region within the last 10,000 years. Moreover, there is no evidence of click consonants in languages in this region. However, the historical evidence is incomplete. Archaeological evidence from burials at Gobero in southwestern Chad suggests the presence of distinct hunter-gatherer populations in this region during the mid-Holocene, when conditions were human and foraging conditions were optimal for survival. These graves suggest the presence of a hunter-gatherer population with distinct morphological features, including tall stature, not typical of present Pygmy populations in Central Africa. Archaeological findings of distinct rock art are also consistent with the presence of such populations in Central and West Africa prior to Bantu settlements. This archaeological evidence dates to the Neolithic period. Collectively, the genetic and archaeological evidence suggests that hunter-gatherer populations may have inhabited western parts of Africa, as well as eastern and southern Africa, 10,000 years ago. Our findings provide new insights into the ancient hunter-gatherer admixture in Africa. A critical next step will be to identify the deep sequence multiple population across the region to help provide a source and complexity of this admixture. Additionally, given the extensive migration and replacement of ancient populations across Africa, it is likely that present populations do not represent ancient hunting and foraging people inhabiting these parts of Africa. Read that again. It is likely that present populations do not represent ancient hunting and foraging people inhabiting these parts of Africa. So again, that's what this paper brings out. AGVP, the African Genome Variation Project, it brings this out in the supplemental part that, well, who we see there today may not represent the ancient settlers. The most likely candidates of the ancient settlers are the people of Khoisan and forest hunter-gatherer groups ancestry, which again is only 2.5% on the B side, haplogroup B of African Americans, as we read in ISOG. With that being stated, let's transition from here to the next portion of this video, and then I'm going to land my plane, as you guys say. Let me go and share this. Okay, I think this is a great segue here. Ancient admixture to Africa from the ancestors of non-Africans. A lot of people are going to flip. A lot of you racists are going to flip. But you want to go around trying to say all of us are pygmies or some shit, forest people or some shit, which is a damn lie. I don't know if you're lying or you just misinformed and you want to, but I think it's lying because you know better. You know better. Remember, lying means you intentionally do it. You know, a lot of times we misappropriate that term liar But some people are just misinformed and they're spreading misinformation or disinformation or whatever. Well, disinformation will be lying, but misinformation rather, right? So that's what we're here for. That's what YAP is here for. We're here to educate you guys on these things. You're not gonna get it from these racist ass channels, these white supremacists and blackface that's calling all of the African diaspora jungle niggas. I can't make this shit up. That's why I had to come on and break down who the Pygmies are and what their genetic legacy was and their genetic footprint. They're ancient forager groups from sub-Saharan Africa. It says here, ancient admixture into Africa from the ancestors of non-Africans. Christopher B. Cole and others, 2020. It says genetic diversity across the human populations. You know what? How am I going to share this one? Because this is a PDF. Let me put this in the chat. Let me find out how to put this in the chat. Hold on, y'all. Ancient admixture. Let me just search that real quick. Ancient admixture into Africa from the ancestors of non-Africans. There you go. So how I get this paper? Oh well, you can get it on BioRxiv. I usually go through ResearchGate, but here's a quicker source. This way you don't have to download the PDF like I did. Boom, you got the paper now. And here's the paper title in the chat as well. So you guys are well informed. All right. So with no further ado, let's get into this article. Let's go now. Genetic diversity across human population has been shaped by demographic history, making it possible to infer past demographic events from extant genomes. Hey, New Hope said that's probably why we start calling our women shorties, which means fine pygmy women. You funny, bro. It says, however, demographic inferences in the ancient past is difficult, particularly around the Outer Africa event in the late Middle Paleolithic, a period of profound importance to our species' history. Here we present SMC, a Bayesian method for inference of time-varying population sizes and directional migration rates under the correlation with recombination model to study ancient demographic events. We find evidence for substantial migrations from the ancestors of present-day Eurasians into African groups between 40 and 70,000 years ago. So this is a very old Eurasian introgression into Africa, which I believe, and which was brought out by, I believe, what's the geneticist's name? Can't think of his name right now. The East Indian brother. Can't think of his name. He points out that their DE needs to be your DE pops up about 70,000 years ago. So you have an ancient Eurasian migration, including DE, and then you have a more recent in the Holocene and onward migration, including the E markers, right? It says predating the diversion of Eastern and Western Eurasian lineages. This event accounts for previously unexplained. What was his name? Rahib Khan, I think. Whatever, how you say his name, Rahib Khan. It just popped in my head. This event accounts for previously unexplained genetic diversity in African populations and supports the existence of a novel population substructure in the late Middle Paleolithic. Our results indicate that our species' demographic history around the Outer Africa event is more complex than previously appreciated. Introduction. Methods to characterize demographic history from genetic data alone form a useful and independent complement to archaeological approaches, and many methods have been developed for this purpose. A particularly interesting time in human history is the end of the Middle Paleolithic, approximately 60,000 years ago, which saw the divergence of the most deeply sampled lineages of human genetic variation, integration into multiple archaic sources, and the expansion of anatomically modern humans out of Africa. As archaeological evidence and ancient DNA from this period are scarce, inference of demography from present-day genetic data is potentially very informative. So technically challenge you. Thank you, brother Rajiv Khan. The phylogenetic trees over a set of samples as they change along the genome through recombination, collectively referred to as the ancestral recombination graph. Record all information about the sample's evolutionary history. This history itself is shaped by the population demography, a statistical relationship that is quantified by correlation with recombination model. The ARG is complex data structure, which is only weakly constrained by observed genetic polymorphisms, making inference of demography difficult. By making approximations to the CWR, for instance, by making independent sites assumptions, efficient parametric inference of demography becomes possible. Methods including PSMC, D1CA1, and SMC++ allow non-parametric inference of demography and a closer approximation to the CWR, but one that does not include gene flow between populations. MSMC introduced the cross correlation rate. MSMC IM describe how to interpret this rate in the context of isolation migration model to estimate a migration rate between populations. However, these methods are not well suited for estimating directional migrational rates. So I know a lot of you guys will like me reading the technical stuff, but I want to read it from top to bottom. So just got to get through it. They're just giving their mechanisms on how they came to their conclusions. All right. Here we stand. SMC's sequential Monte Carlo inference of the sequentially Markovian correlation to allow inference of direct migration. SMC is a Bayesian method that uses a particle filter to explicitly sample from the posterior distribution of ARGs or multiple diploid samples under the full CWR model. So we all know what the Bayesian method is. I covered it in the show before. It's basically hypothesizing, right? This is the best way to say it. Finding out what best hypothesis is going to fit the model, right? Since particle filters operate by simulating latent variables under the statistical model of interest, it becomes possible to handle complex demographic scenarios. We exploit this by extending the CWR model to include time-varying directional migration rates in two-island demographic model. We use the posterior samples of ARGs, including migration events, to update the parameters of the demographic model using either expectation maximization of variational bias procedure and iterate these steps until convergence. We apply SMC to estimate directional migration rates and whole genome sequencing data from the Simon's Genome Diversity Panel and the Human Genome Diversity Panel to investigate population structure around the Out of Africa event. Okay, y'all got through that, so let's keep going. So results. They gave you mechanisms. They show you how they come to these conclusions. What are they using to get these calculations? Now let's deal with what the results are. Substantial migration from Eurasian to your African ancestors. And this is what makes a lot of people mad. A lot of people skin crawl. Why? Because they don't want to have anything with do with Eurasians, because they've been taught Eurasian means white, Africa means black, and black and white people should be in this eternal warfare until until the cows come home or what have you, like until perpetuity. But when we look at our genetics, we're more closely related to people than we think. And that's why people get upset with the YAP game, because we're showing information and data connecting us to Jews, to Arabians, to North Africans, right? We're going against the status quo, to Europeans, right? Central Asians, Japanese, Tibetans. We're showing that information, that we're more interconnected versus the racist, stereotypical, isolated model. Just saying that we were always in one area, never traveled. There was no admixing going on. There was no cultural exchange. And the serendipitous model where we say, oh, well, if we develop anything, it was in isolation. It's not true at all. It's the reason you see Near Eastern cultures advance so fast, so quickly. It's because of cultural exchange. They're moving around and migrating. You know, they're speaking to more people. Well-traveled man is wise, like in the book of Sirach, because they're picking up more skills. You understand? As opposed to someone that isolates themselves, they usually tend to be more what? Primitive. That's usually the trend they go. People that migrate tend to do what? Advance. We see Bantus advancing. You know, that's why Ranger Herrera's work, she points out that the Bantus once lived in stone edifices, stone buildings. You know, they were very advanced. And then as the colonialism comes in, wars happen, that decreases and diminishes, right? So the Saharan technology, the understanding of irrigation and stuff like that, we see that coming from the north down to the south into sub-Saharan Africans, which I believe is representative of E1B1A migration and E1B1B, because you do see M78 in Western Central Africa. You do see RVA8 there as well, right? But the point is, these people that are migratory tend to pick up more skills and learn and develop more than someone that's, you know, like in Jarawa or something. Anyway, substantial migrations from Eurasian to African ancestors. We use SMC to analyze pairs of individuals from the SGDP and simultaneously infer migration rates and effective population sizes under a two-island model with directional migration. Population sizes and migration rates are modeled as piecewise constant across 32 exponentially spaced epochs from 133 to 133,016 generations in the past, corresponding to 3.8 thousand to 3.8 million years ago. Using a generation 29 years, we find that the method infers high rates of migration from the descendants of the out of Africa event, non-Africans to Africans, but not to the opposite direction. In the period of 30 to 70,000 years ago, corresponding to the late Middle Paleolithic, and populations from Niger, Kordofanian, and Nilo-Saharan language groups comprising the majority of the population on the African continent. The peak inferred migration rate from Eurasian populations, and then they give this mathematical number here, and units per proportion of the largest ancestral African population replaced per generation, most frequently falls in the epoch spanning 35 to 45,000 years ago, while peak migration rates in the opposite direction are substantially lower and occur earlier. In the epoch spanning 55 to 70,000 years ago, populations of Afro-Asiatic language groups show evidence of large amounts of directional migration in the Holocene, which is consistent with previous findings, relatively recent European integration into these populations. There's an old admixture and then there's a more recent Holocene. We usually speak a lot about the Holocene admixture, but all of this shows and culminates that these people were not static or isolated, right? It's impossible. We've been doing it all week. We showed that there's a lot of mitogenomes that are leaving sub-Saharan Africa during this time and going into the north, going into Europe, and going to Southwest Asia. And they do it anciently, and then they do it more recently in Holocene. So I say, wait a minute, a lot of these genes don't come from slavery. A lot of these genes, like in Europe, it was like lopsided. It was upside down. There was more sub-Saharan African mitogenomes or mitochondrial DNA that dated back to the Holocene than it was as a result of the transatlantic slave trade or Saharan slave trade. Showing you that these people have been migratory for a long time. There are no static people or unchanging people, as we read yesterday. Right? Our ancestry is replete with different cultures, different languages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's not just one thing defines us. It says the SSD impact error is introduced by statistical phasing, which is used to phase the SGDP data. We repeated the analysis above on a subset of physically phased individuals from Human Genome Diversity Project. This data set comprises individuals from 4 African, Yoruban, Sun, Mbudi, and Baka, and 9 non-African populations, the Druze, the Han, the Karatiana, 2 Papian populations, the Batman, Pima, and Sardinia and Yakut. SMC results in the HDDP are qualitatively similar to those in the SGDP. Inferred migrations are in general lower in HDDP data than when using matched SGDP samples. But in all cases, the migration rates from Eurasia to Africa are substantially higher than in the opposite directions, consistent with findings in the SGDP. So what they're saying is that there's more people coming in than out, right? We asked whether SMC has power to detect large back migration event in the late Middle Paleolithic and distinguish it from other demographic scenarios. To answer this, we use SCRM to stimulate a gigabase of sequence data under a two-island demographic model with effective population sizes chosen to be comparable to typical African Eurasian populations as inferred from real data. To this, we added a 10 kY pulse of forward, backward to or bi-directional migration of varying strengths, with the midpoint of the migration pulse within the range of 40 to 70,000 years ago. To quantify inferred amount of migration, we calculate the integrated migration fraction, defined as 1 minus the probability that a lineage in the destination, e.g. African population, traced backwards in time remains in that population across a given epoch according to the migration model. For the simulations, we chose the most 100,000-year-old most recent 100,000 years ago as epoch and used scenarios with IMFs ranging from 0 to 0.593. For each simulation, we report that the inferred IMF in both forward and backward direction. Full results are given in supplemental sections S5. We find that SMC has good power to detect backward migration pulses up to 60,000 years ago, while power drops off at 70,000 years ago. In the pure backward migration case, some forward migration is falsely inferred, but this is always substantially less than the inferred backward migration. However, in the case of true forward migration as well as bidirectional migration, roughly equals mixtures of forward and backward migration are inferred. We include that the epoch 40 to 7,000 years ago, the forward and bidirectional scenarios are difficult to distinguish from each other, but both can be distinguished from backward migration, the only scenario resulting in substantially different inferred backward and forward migrations. To validate the existence of migration pulse, though not its direction, we next analyze the same data using MSMC, which is widely used to estimate gene flow in ancient past by estimating the relative cross correlation rate between two populations. We use the updated implementation recommended by the authors and first published in. Each of the SMC analysis are repeated using MSMC2 to estimate effective population size and RCCR. Consistent with previous analysis conducted by MSMC2, our estimates show high RCCR in the late middle Pleistocene in both SGDP and HGDP. These observations confirm the existence of substantial pulse of ancient gene flow between Eurasian, Han Chinese, and Africans. Right? Okay, so migration predates East-West Eurasian divergence. To assess whether the inferred back migration shows variation across the descendants of the Outer Africa event, and this is important, y'all. I know a lot of technical jargons getting thrown out there. I'm probably losing some people, but just hang tight, man. This is very important because what this paper right here is talking about, if this introgression into Africa from Eurasians going back in happened during this time period, that means I just lost it. Not archaic hominid, because we do have archaic hominid. Neanderthal component. There we go. The Neanderthal component that the Yoruba have and my ancestors have, right, does not come from people just simply that are not related to us coming down and mixing with us. But we had the component before modern Europeans would have had the component. That's what this paper is going to talk about. And it's going to say it plainly here when we get to the summary, well, the conclusion, right? It's going to say it plainly. So y'all just hang tight. It says to assess whether the inferred back migration shows variation across the descendants of the Outer Africa event. And this is what I was hinting to, right? We repeated the analysis using 3 representative non-African groups in the SGDP: the Han Chinese, French European, and the Papuans. Since simulations show that SMC has little power to detect migrations predating 70,000 years ago, and to exclude Holocene migration, the epoch we use to calculate real data IMLs comprise the period of peak inferred migration up to the period of diminishing power 30 to 70,000 years ago. We use this epoch for all subsequent analysis. Inferred IMLs are not significantly different between Han Chinese and European populations and non-Afro-Asiatic populations. consistent with migration occurring before the European East Asian split approximately 40,000 years ago. This is huge right here. We're going to get to it later. Why? The contribution of this admixture event to extent African genetic variation is substantial. The estimated IMFs indicate that for individuals in the major African language groups, approximately a third of ancestral lineages trace their ancestry through the Proto-Eurasian population. The estimated IMFs indicate that for individuals in the major African language groups, approximately a third of ancestral lineages trace their ancestry through the Proto-Eurasian population. This will go back to your basal Eurasian group, man. Your basal Eurasians. That's what Proto-Eurasian is. So these, and we know what group this is talking about. These are your E1, B1A, E1, B1B groups. These are your E markers. These are your YAP markers that has this ancestry that goes back to the basal Eurasians. We know it's not the A and B. It's going to tell you why here in a minute. See, again, it says Niger-Cordoffian group, now Saharan groups, and they give the figures there. When we estimate these proportions using the Pompeian sample to represent non-African descendants, we find slightly but significantly smaller values compared to estimates using either the Han Chinese or European populations. Similarly, in the HGDP, inferred migration of both Pompeian groups was lower than French and Han. We comment on this observation in the discussion. It says directional migration explains excess inferred African genetic diversity 100,000 years ago. Previous studies looking at effective population sizes in human ancestral populations have consistently reported inflated inferences in African populations approximately 100,000 years ago, often hypothesized to be due to unaccounted for population substruction within Africa. We use SMC to analyze African individuals paired with an individual from one of the three non-African populations, Han Chinese, French European, and Pompeians, and infer entity power for the African ancestral population under the two-island model with directional migration. Each analysis was represented 3 times to assess the contribution of stochastic sampling to the inferences. SMC infers substantially lower African NE than MSMC in the period 8,000 years ago to 3,000 years ago. In addition, while MSMC inferences show convergence of African Eurasian ancestral NE estimates only 300,000 years ago, inferences from SMC indicate convergence at 150,000 years ago. Closer to the hypothesized time of diversification of the ancestral lineages prior to the main out of Africa migration episode. The same analysis of physically phased sample from HGDP show that these results are not driven by errors due to statistical phasing. When we use SMC to infer both African and European NE under a single population model without migration, NE estimates were comparable to those from MSMC, indicating that SMC inferences are not driven by methodological biases particular to SMC. To more directly support the interpretation that the lower African NE inferred by SMC is due to appropriate modeling of directional migration, we again use correlation simulation with SCRM to investigate various migration scenarios and their effects on inferred African NE. Using the simulation framework as above, we examine NE estimates inferred on a two-island model with migration. In addition, NE separately inferred for each of the 2 simulated populations on a single population model. Focusing on single population inferences, we found that for simulated African populations that have received substantial migration from the simulated Eurasian population, either through backward or bidirectional migration, inferred NE values indeed were substantially inflated compared to true values. While this effect was not seen when forward African to Eurasian migration was simulated, similarly, single populated Eurasian NE estimates were inflated in the presence of forward and bidirectional migration, but not backward migration. In contrast, when using a model that includes migration of fern, African, NE, do not show inflation in any of the three scenarios, we conclude that the inferences from SMC, SMC, and MSMC are compatible with substantial back migration from ancestral Eurasians into Africans. Let me read that again. We conclude that the inferences from the SMC, and MSMC are compatible with substantial back migration from ancestral Eurasians into Africans. This is a part of our genetic matrix. You don't get sub-Saharan Africans with the E markers without Eurasians. That is an integral part of our genetic makeup. But you got Africanists, you got these people with serendipitous models, you got people with these racial ideas and racial schemas trying to delimit sub-Saharan African peoples. EM2, right? You're trying to delimit E1B1A. But as we just read, these calculations have shown that has been substantial back migration from ancestral Eurasians. And this, we get a third of this ancestry from what? Basal Eurasians, Proto-Eurasians. It says, but not substantial bidirectional or forward migration. Although they see it, it's not as great as the back migration scenario, right? So let's gene flow to Central and South African hunter-gatherers. So this is going to show that there's a difference between, Yoruban-related people and like Mbuti and Mayaka people, right? They will be your Paleo-Africans, autochthonous Africans. But the Yoruban-related people are the people with the basal Eurasian-related ancestry. All right. As we're going to read here, less gene flow to Central and South African hunter-gatherers. We infer substantial Eurasian back migration into all African groups. However, the inferred IMFs for individuals from Khoisan populations are significantly lower than for any other group. So all African groups have it, but they're lower in these other groups. I'm going to show you why. So how are the inferred IMFs for individuals from Khoisan populations significantly lower than for any other groups? And like I said before, the Sun-related population, as we just read, may have been more widespread, and that's why they're patchy. And the same thing with Mbuti. That's why they're patchy over there, because they were displaced and disrupted by Bantu expansions and other Yap markets coming in and displacing them. It says, to further support this observation, we use the MSMC to estimate the relative cross-correlation rate for several populations and find evidence for gene flow between Yorubans and Eurasians that is not shared with Khoisan individuals in either the SGPD and the HDDP. So we can see a difference here between Yoruban-related people and Khoisan people, right? We see the gene flow between Yorubans and Eurasians, right? Which a lot of it goes back to those basal Eurasian populations. But we don't share those same signals with Khoisan individuals. These results are consistent across Eurasian donor populations. The Khoisan individuals are particular outliers whose ancestors are inferred to have experienced approximately half the amount of admixture seen in Nilo-Saharan and Niger Kordofanian groups. In addition, we find that in Mbuti Biaka, both Central African hunter-gatherer populations shows levels of Eurasian gene flow that are intermediate between levels observed in Khoisan and Yorubans. This is mirrored by inferred IMLs for Central African hunter-gatherers, which are significantly lower than other Niger Kordofanian groups, possibly reflecting the proposed early split of Mbuti and Biaka from the remaining ancestral African populations between 60 and 200,000 years ago. All right. No evidence for SS Neanderthal ancestry. Remember, we wanted to bring this out. It says previous studies have proposed that a backflow from Eurasia may have brought Neanderthal ancestry into African population. To assess whether the proposed late Middle Paleolithic back migration might have introduced Neanderthal material, we analyzed Yoruban and French individuals using SMC to draw a sample from the posterior distribution of ARGs, isolated the marginal trees containing an inferred back migration event, in the epoch 30 to 70,000 years ago and reported the inferred admixture tracks. To assess whether the identified segments are plausible, we confirm that their length distribution is consistent with the IMF timing of migration inferred by SMC. And as expected, we found that these African segments with putative Eurasian ancestry tend to be more closely related to a Eurasian sample than another representative of the same African population. That's huge. It says in a global data set of modern and ancient individuals compiled by the Reich Group, within these African segments that are likely enriched for material with Eurasian ancestry, we then use these statistics to identify enrichment for Neanderthal material compared to an African background. Find no evidence for gene flow with the Vendiga Neanderthal on the Mbudi baseline or when compared to different Yorubans. We additionally find no evidence for increased affinity to the Vendiga Neanderthal when compared to the outline, as would it be expected if the material were descended from admixing Eurasians. So watch this. Watch for the conclusion. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. The payout's going to be good. Watch this. As would be expected, the material were descended from admixing Eurasian. However, we find restricted to the identified segments, these statistics have power to detect evidence. The known admixture from the Vendiga into the French individual, suggesting the lack of power does not explain the lack of evidence we find for Neanderthal admixture into Africans. In addition, we find no difference in affinity to Neanderthals or Denisovans between the variants which fall as segments in the whole genome. Taken together, this suggests that Eurasian-derived segments of African genomes are not enriched with Neanderthal material. So we didn't get the Neanderthal admixture genome from directly admixed with Eurasian-related population today. We didn't get that. So where did we get it from? It's in the discussion. Watch this. We know we do have it. Where does it come from? Or when did it enter the gene pool rather? It says here, we have developed an approach for estimating demographic parameters and ARGs from whole genome sequence data, which can handle inference in complex demographic models, and implemented this in the software program SMC. We use SMC to investigate ancient migration rates and population substructure and found evidence for substantial admixture from ancestors of present-day Eurasian populations into African populations in the late Middle Paleolithic. Again, we read and reinforced that our ancestry actually goes back to basal Eurasians. Our analysis suggests that a population ancestor to present-day Eurasians contributed as much as a third of the genetic material in many modern African populations. Find no difference in inferred admixed proportions when using French Europeans or Han Chinese as extant representatives of the donor population, indicating that the admixture population must have split from the outer Africa population before the East and West Eurasian divergence, implying a lower bound on the timing of the admixture approximately 40,000 years ago. It appears that our results suggest that the migrating populations were more similar to present-day French and Chinese populations than to Papuans. However, up to 5% of the genomes of some present-day Papuans have been suggested to derive from archaic introgressions, and these contributions will have reduced the inferred levels of admixture to Africans when using Papuans as representative of the Eurasian ancestors. The alternative explanation of an early divergence of Papuans and Eurasian ancestors is possible, but contested in light of documented Eurasian admixture into Oceania. The effects of this early isolation are likely to be small relative to the large confounding effects of Denisovan admixture. The proposed period of admixture has biased previous inferences of African population sizes. We show that including directional migration into the model resolves previously unexplained high inferred NE in the period 80 to 300,000 years ago. It's well known that effective population size estimates are biased in the presence of population substructure and migration. We use simulations to show that the proposed admixture event indeed causes an increase in estimated NE and analysis that do not explicitly model migration. Correctly modeling or directional migration recovers the correct NE and allows us to infer a more recent split time between the two populations than indicated by previous analysis, although we did not attempt to formally estimate with this time of divergence. We found that not all populations in Africa have been equally affected by proposed migration event. While the ancestors of Niger, Kordofanian, and Nilo-Saharan populations show evidence of similar levels of Eurasian admixture, the ancestors of Central African and South African hunter-gatherer populations show markedly lower levels. So there is a difference because we have these groups here, which are a lot of E markers amongst them, and then you have the A and B markers, which is Central African, South African hunter-gatherers. They don't have that much of the Eurasian admixture, and that's explained because we had it first, and then as we, depopulated and admixed with them, they picked up those signals from us indirectly. It says the date of genetic diversification of both central hunter-gatherers and Khoisan is contested, but a date of 100,000 years ago has been proposed, providing a putative upper bound on the main admixture event. Our simulations indicate that SMC has little power to detect the impact of migration events occurring more than 70,000 years ago, providing an additional upper bound on the time of the migration episode, or the fraction of it that left sufficiently distinct imprint on extant genetic material. And that 70,000 years ago is important because, again, 70,000 years ago, that's when they estimate DE forming, right? DE comes on the scene 70,000 years ago, right? And that's when we start seeing, this component coming in and bringing in that basal Eurasian DNA, right? It says provide an additional upper bound on the time of the migration episode or the fraction of it that left a sufficiently distinct imprint on extant genetic material. Compared to the remainder of the Niger Kordofanians and Nilo-Saharans on the one hand and the SHG population on the other, the Mbuti and Bayaka show intermediate levels of admixture. Of these populations, the Biaka show slightly higher levels of admixture than the Mbuti, which is likely due to the well-documented admixture from West African groups not shared with the Mbuti. The lower levels of admixture in Mbuti and Biaka compared to Niger Kordofanian and Nilo-Saharan groups imply at least partial diversification of the form at the time of the migration, replacing the upper bound on the timing. However, dating the diversification of these groups is difficult. Recent estimates using F statistics place the split concurrent with the sun in a large-scale early expansion 200 to 250,000 years ago, while older data consistently report an earlier split time between 50 and 90,000 years ago. Further clarity on the early structure and diversification of hunter-gathering populations are necessary to interpret the interaction with Eurasian migrants. Afro-Asiatic populations, on the other hand, show high levels of admixture, which also appears to be much more recent origin, and it appears likely that this is a result of extensive admixture from Eurasian populations during the Holocene, so less than 10,000 years ago. It has previously been suggested that Eurasian-backed migration may be responsible for Neanderthal material in Africans. However, we find no evidence for enrichment of Neanderthal-like material in purely Eurasian-derived genomic segments of Africans, indicating that Neanderthal introgression into Eurasian occurred after the African integration event we study here. Our further population structure in Eurasian ancestral population precluded substantial transmission of Neanderthal material into Africa. Our findings are consistent with several other published observations. Migration rates estimates using MSMC-IM revealed high levels of admixture at times comparable to our results. The correlation intensity function additionally shows similar histories between sub-Saharan African and Eurasian groups with high correlation intensity and epochs consistent with our inference and those of MSMC and IM. Let me read that again. Correlation intensity function additionally shows similar histories between sub-Saharan African and Eurasian groups. I know that burns and boils your blood. A lot of you racists out there, a lot of you rednecks and blackface, that makes you upset that sub-Saharan Africans are directly connected to Eurasian groups. But this is what the data is showing. This is what it's showing. It says with high correlation intensity and epochs consistent with our inference and those of MSMC-IM, supporting both an early split between the groups and a substantial replacement of genetic material more recently than 100,000 years ago. Evidence has mounting for multiple migrations into the Eurasian continent, possibly mediated by climatic drivers. Eurasian backflow during the Holocene has been well established, but earlier migration has also been proposed based on observation of spatial distribution, Y chromosome, and mitochondrial haplogroups. At the same time, evidence has been mounting for extreme heterogeneity in the history of sub-Saharan Africans. At the same time, the evidence has been mounting because we see the evidence in the Holocene. We see the evidence in the Middle Paleolithic. We see it. It's a part of the sub-Saharan African matrix. You don't have the Eurasian input, you don't have modern sub-Saharan Africans. It's just that damn simple. It's a part of our history. It's a part of our demography. It's very interesting. We dated it 70,000 years ago. That's when they date DE, and that's when we start seeing these signatures come in. It says here, at the same time, evidence has been mounting for extreme heterogeneity in the history of sub-Saharan Africans. Again, sub-Saharan Africans are not homogeneous. They're not all the same. And that's what the papers are pointing towards. With several unsampled populations theorized to have contributed at various points in the past, in light of these recent studies, the observation in this paper add to the growing body of evidence for complex population structure and migration surrounding the out of Africa event, leading to substantial replacement of the African population in the late Middle Paleolithic. And that's the paper, man. That's the paper. So anybody saying that they're heterogeneous, that the sub-Saharan Africans are all homogeneous, that we're all the same, that is a lie. We can clearly see that we have a Eurasian component that's old, and we have one that's more recent in the Holocene. Hence, Luceret's paper showing that the Bantu expansion has a connection with the Levantine, Bronze Age Levantine-like ancestry. These migrations have been happening for tens of thousands of years. Hence, seeing many related groups with Levantine Neolithic-like ancestry components. Hence, the Matsi having Eurasian DNA dating back to 5,000 BCE. Hence, the Yoruba having Eurasian elements that are less than 7.5 thousand years ago. The Jola, the Fula, having Eurasian components dating to 3,000 years ago. The Mandinka, we could keep going. This is heterogeneity. This is not a homogeneous population. They're not all the same. But you got, again, goofballs trying to say you're all the forest people. No, we're not. We have our own distinct lineage. It's called Yap. That's why we call ourselves Yap Gang. We have our own distinct lineage that nobody else on the planet has. The Ainu of Japan, they have their own distinct lineage that we share with them. Yap. Many Arabic and Jewish people have their own distinct lineage that's known as Yap that we share with them. That's why we call ourselves Yap Gang. Most African Americans, they have the Yap marker. They're downstream markers of DE. And those people across the globe are diverse. And they're not homogeneous. Whether you see them in sub-Saharan Africa, whether you see them as the people of the islands out in the Indian Ocean, whether you see them in Southeast Asia, or whether you see them in Japan, whether you see them in Jewish groups, Arabic groups, we all have this shared history. And it's diverse. I have to keep repeating that, man. This would need to be taught in Black History Month. Because you've been taught that you're homogenous and all Black people are the same for too goddamn long, and that's not true. We have Eurasian components as well. It's just that simple. This is not hard to grasp. So let's read the paper that summarizes this pretty neatly, right? So let's type of haplogroup DE, Eurasia. Find this paper real quick. All right, so check this out. Let's go here. This is in the Commons and Wiki. And then we'll drop it here. This is a summation of the paper we just read. Right? You know, I wasn't trying to put y'all to sleep, but we had to read that entire thing so you can get the whole picture, right? So it says haplogroup E was birthed in Eurasia about 77,000 years ago, approximately 75,000 BC. Haplogroup E migrated into Africa as a part of a massive migration. Haplogroup DE next to CF were the basal Eurasian lineages, which expanded from the Middle East. The common ancestral lineage, Y-DNA atom, is suggested to have originated somewhere in the Middle East or the Iranian plateau. Per Arneson et al. 2020, Universal Human Phylogeny. We covered that paper before, right? Massive African migration and following admixture create the main different Eurasian populations of today. We find evidence for substantial migration from the ancestors of present-day Africans into Eurasian groups about 70,000 years ago. Again, this puts you where D is. This brings you to YAP. This event accounts for previously unexplained genetic diversity in African populations and supports the existence of novel population substructure in the late Middle Paleolithic. Our results indicate that our species' demographic history around the out-of-Africa event is more complex than previously appreciated. In other words, modern African people, sub-Saharan Africans, formed from indigenous Paleo-African groups and intrusive Eurasians. Basal Eurasians and ancient North Africans. Finally, there is the fact why haplogroup E is nowadays dominant among non-hunter-gatherer groups in Africa and is within the Eurasian clade DE, while indigenous African hunter-gatherers belong to haplogroup A00 and B. Ancient admixture into Africa from the ancestors of non-Africans. And that's what we just read. That's exactly what we just read. And this is Razib Khan, I think. Massive Basal. We might read that one too. Why not? Why not? Why not read Razib Khan? It says here, it is common to distinguish between Africans and non-Africans with the former. Let me get y'all this. Put this in the chat. This is what separates us, man. But you got people saying, "Oh, we always been in the jungles of West Coast of Africa." That's no. You don't know your damn history. Why? Because you don't study genetics. The one field that elucidate ancestry, you guys avoid it like the plague. And the reason why a true historian has avoided it like the plague, because he took a DNA test and found out he was haplogroup I. So now he wants to poo-poo and shit on our ancestry. Anyway. It is common to distinguish between Africans and non-Africans, with the former being much more genetically diverse than the latter. But the real gap in human origin seems to be between really old Africans, Paleo-Africans, and the rest of Afrasians. The Paleo-African element is entirely confined to Africa, while the Afrasian one is found both in Africa and Eurasia. Indeed, modern humans can be entirely split into two groups: a group of pure Afrasians, which includes all non-Africans, and a group of Afrasian Paleo-Africans, which includes all non-Caucasoid Africans. Human groups are entirely Paleo-African origin, unhybridized, with the younger Afrasians are no longer in existence. Today, a preprint with very sophisticated computational methods of data analysis was posted. That's why I was reading through, a lot of that stuff. Wasn't trying to put y'all to sleep, just trying to read through it, right? It says the figure to the right shows the proportion of deep Eurasian admixture into each major sub-Saharan African population. As you can see, the Afro-Asiatics have the most, the Nile-Saharans are next up, and then Niger-Qaddarfians have a lot too. Why? Because it's coming from this ancient admixture. And then the Khoisan have the lowest models because they get it indirectly from us when we mix with them. Exactly. It says basically, let me blow this up a little bit more. Maybe this is not big enough. Hold on. Sorry, y'all. It says here, let me go down. Basically, the preprint very formally breaks down the high likelihood that Dynix model outlined in the mid-aughts was correct. Even back in 2008, there was an mtDNA phylogeny correlation that aligned with this hypothesis. The done in human matrilineal diversity. Finally, there's the fact that Y haplogroup E is dominant among non-hunter-gatherers in Africa, and it is within the Eurasian clade DE. The abstract of the new preprint makes the genome-wide results pretty clearly in alignment with the older uniparental evidence, as well as some interesting twists that one can infer from population genomics. Genetic diversity across human populations has been shaped by demographic history, making it possible to infer past demographics events from extant genomes. However, demographic inferences in the ancient past is difficult, particularly around the Outer Africa event in the late Middle Paleolithic, a period of profound importance to our species history. Here we present SMC. As you guys know, we just read this. A Bayesian method for inference of time-varying population sizes and directional migration rates under the correlations with recombination model to study ancient demographic events. We find evidence for substantial migration from the ancestors of present-day Eurasians into African groups between 40 and 70,000 years ago, predating the divergence of Eastern and Western Eurasian lineages. This event accounts for previously unexplained genetic diversity in African populations and supports the existence of novel population structure in late middle Paleolithic. Our results indicate that our species demographic history around the Outer Africa event is more complex than previously appreciated. Novel means new, so these people are coming in. They are new peoples to the region, right? And these new people to the region most likely are the TE Yap bearers. The reason I put Basal Eurasia in the headline is that this is the ghost population postulated by Rice Group researcher in the first half of the teens to account for the fact that Mesolithic European hunter-gatherers seem to share more genetically with people such as Oceanians and Han Chinese in some ways that European first farmers. More precisely, the early West Asian farmer groups seem to be a mix of population that is distinct as the first branch of non-African humanity, Basal Eurasians, and people related to West Eurasian Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. And people, the latter place West Asians in the clade with Pleistocene Europeans and early Siberians as a Western group, while the former means that West Asians have ancestry that is more distant to Papuans and Amerindians than Mesolithic European hunter-gatherers. Another thing that is notable about Basal Eurasians, and there is some circumstantial evidence that the population did not undergo much admixture with Neanderthals. This is important because the authors above report that dominant signal of admixture between 40 and 7,000 years ago didn't contribute Neanderthal admixture. Additionally, there is symmetrical distance from Han and European, which means the gene flow predates the divergence. Europeans have some Basal Eurasian admixture. And again, to recapitulate what the paper says, this event happened before modern Europeans, or the ancestors of modern Europeans, admixed with Neanderthals. So it leaves the question wide open: where did we get our Neanderthal admixture? Obviously, we've been moving and migrating since then. But hey, let you guys have this isolated idea of static peoples, but the evidence is showing that it's not that way, and there's a lot of heterogeneity amongst sub-Saharan Africans. It says here, additionally, there is the symmetrical distance from Han and European, which means that the gene flow predates the divergence. Europeans have some basal admixture, Eurasian admixture, so symmetry might imply that this admixture is even basal to the Basal Eurasians. Though I'm not sure they have the statistical power to ascertain this. Rather, Well, whatever this back migration was, it probably doesn't expand the population beyond the Near East. It was probably just a bit before the massive out of Africa break that happened approximately 55,000 years ago, and is synchronous with Neanderthal admixture that we currently detect. There are some things to reflect on in light of these data. First, crazy ideas sometimes are true. Reading Dianicki's 2005 post, today is not that exciting. It is quite plausible, perhaps right even. But in 2005, it seemed crazy. The dogma of the tree-like phylogeny and explosive out of Africa event all over the world was pretty strong then. It was a robust prior and hard to entertain alternative models, but science advances, so here we are. Second, terms like Eurasian African do a little too much work. The ancestral lineages that we are thinking of here may not have been geographically where we assume using geographical term. So again, just because you see people in present-day population doesn't mean he was always there. There's a good amount of evidence that the ancestors of non-African lineage went through a protracted bottleneck. But we don't know where the bottleneck occurred. We call it non-African, but perhaps the bottleneck occurred in Kenya. We don't know. The bottleneck includes basal Eurasian, so it's predated Neanderthal admixture and massive radiation approximately 55 to 60,000 years ago. The most likely region is probably the Levant and Arabia. Sub-Saharan Africa seems to be lacking in geographical barriers, such as a mega desert or bodies to water, to sustain barriers to gene flow for 1,000 years. But most likely does not mean overwhelmingly likely. Preprints like the one above fill in a lot of general dynamics, but I think ancient DNA is going to be necessary to nail down a model tightly. What can we expect? Honestly, we don't know, but here's my general sense of what ancient DNA plus better methods plus more compute time. Look at all the simulations. And non-genetic information, paleontology, paleoclimate, paleo everything might tell us. Below is my best guess outline. Modern humans diversified in Africa 100 to 200,000 years ago. One branch related to Eastern modern humans became isolated from other populations 75 to 100,000 years ago. This branch is ancestral non-Africans. They are probably located in the southern Near East. But in Southeast Asia, there are other early expansions of modern human-related groups which have mixed with local hominids. The expansion of a primary non-group African group that most signal of early Asian moderns is gone, though perhaps some of them are responsible for the Denisovian and other archaic signals. At the same time that the non-basal non-Africans are pushing east, the basal non-Africans are pushing west. The admixture between basal Eurasian and African hunter-gatherers of various sorts results in the emergence of what we term Africans. My working assumption is that non-African ancestry and hunter-gatherer population is due to continuous gene flow from the primary synthetic groups. And that's what I was trying to explain to y'all. Our ancestors going and mixing with these groups is why they have that non-African component or Eurasian component. They get it from us. Archaic admixture everywhere. There were earlier human groups. As Ian Matrices once said, the story of the last few 100,000 years is the collapse of the old structure. And that's the entire paper. So from there, to cap this all off and bid you guys farewell, let's go to my favorite geneticist, Moon Taser. Real quick, let's go there. As you guys should have learned throughout this video, majority of African Americans are not in booty pygmies. They're not haplogroup B. They don't have the majority of us don't have the old Paleo-African markers. Majority of us come from YAP. And YAP has a deep, rich history that's very diverse and has contributed with has contributions within this planet with farming, writing, the first city states. We can go on and on and on about the greatness of YAP. But with that being said, let's go into Ibrahim Mutaja's book. You know, these silly guys trying to delimit our ancestry to force and forgers when we don't share that ancestry. That's not us. You know, it's hard for these dudes to speak for themselves. And then the dude who said it has haplogroup I, the man's European, and he want to try to delimit all West Africans or African diasporic individuals to jungle niggas, in his words. All right, so let me get the portion where he talks about. Oh, that's good. I could just read this whole thing to y'all, really, about identity issues. Wow. So hold on. Let me go to cut because it's already 2 in the morning. I guess some of y'all are still using this as white noise, right? So I have this to share with you guys. Let me share this screen here. From Mutasia's book, African Genetics. It says here the quadrants of Africa are connected by males of the E haplogroup, which is the most common male lineage in Africa. The population bearing the E haplogroup apparently emerged in eastern tropical Africa after modern humans left Africa. It spread to all major regions at varying time depths. This is also true for A, B, and R haplogroups in the sense that they do not tell you about the phenotype or culture of an individual who may have them. So you have all of these haplogroups in these regions of sub-Saharan Africa, right? But they don't just, that doesn't tell them about the culture or the phenotype. Oh, these people must be black. Okay, you have R groups that are white. You have A groups that are white. You have E. You have E groups that are white. They don't tell you about phenotype. Oh no, if you're African American, your ancestors definitely had this culture, or you have to follow X culture. Oh, these people have different cultures. They got different languages. Some are Nilo-Saharan, some are Afro-Asiatic, some are have Niger-Congo languages. Right? Some of them are in Europe to this day. Some of them are Jews. Some of them are Arabicized. Some of them are Arabs. Some of them are in the Indian country. You can't stick people into one damn thing. You're trying to put everybody in a box and delimit ancestry. It does not work. It says these genealogical connections cut across geography. So it cut across countries, continents, land masses. It cut across that. Language families. It cut across language families. Breeding populations, it cut across that. Ethnicity. So whatever ethnicity you subscribe to, African American or what have you, it cuts across that. And physical appearance on how people look at it. And I love genetics. I love the field of genomics so much because it kills all of this racial bullshit that you guys know. Because y'all look at race and say, okay, race equals culture, and culture equals race. That's not how it works. Culture is evanescent. Something that we learn and we create while we're living. Has nothing to do with our biological processes. Has nothing to do with that. Has nothing to do with sex. Has nothing to do with reproduction. Right? Those are not determining anything about your Y or X chromosomes. They don't directly contribute. But you've been taught to think like that from 19th, 18th century racists. All right, so let me go back. I want something else I want to read too. Let me go back. Where is it at? Towards the beginning. There it is. Towards the beginning. I want to bring out this point again. I brought it out the other day. Oh, this is a good one too. This is a good quote here. The current locations are not necessarily a guide to the locale of ancestral emergence due to migration. So where you see people today, modern population density, is not a guide to where they were tens of thousands of years ago, or even 1,000 years ago. We got haplogroup T in sub-Saharan Africa. Yeah, our other R markers outside of V88. You got M78 there. Just because you find them there today does not mean they were always there. You got EM2 in the Americas now. You got R1B clades in the Americas now, M269, U106. You got those. You got I markers, I2 markers there today. But if you go back 600 years, 700 years, you're not going to see those markers being prevalent here. Because modern population structure does not denote ancestral ones. Because people move, people got legs, people migrate. All right, so let me go out past that. That's a great quote too. But I want the one where he deals with European colonialism. You go type, and it's in here somewhere, and then I'll bid you guys good night. You know what? I'll just get two more quotes from here. Let me get I like this one too. Yeah, the notion of blackness derives from the received race concept and the taxonomic schema modulated through the tradition of stereotypes. There's so many gems in here, man. There's so many gems in here. But I want the portion where he talks about oh, this is a good one too, man. We're gonna be up all night. He says here, in accurate biogeography is needed, one based on constant dialogue and with data and theory. And that's what we try to do here on the channel. Deal with the data and theory. It says populations are processes and ensembles and similes, not akin to monoliths consisting of uniform particles of a single element that emerged at one time. And that's how they treat our history. That's how they treat sub-Saharan Africa. This is why you have this guy talking about jungle culture and jungle niggas. And we ain't nothing but a bunch of jungle niggas because you think that we're all homogenous and we only come from one component. And it's important to remember, all other things being equal, that over time, a biologically defined group could change cultural practices and or language. This guy's like, hold on, you got to show the culture to be if you want to say you're a Jew, you got to show the culture. No, you don't. Because you can have groups that change culture. They might be biologically related to the people of ancient Israelites. Doesn't mean that they today have to have the culture of ancient Israelites. Nobody has that culture. Nobody has the exact same culture that ancient Israelites. Where your 7 spotted lamps at? Where your stone cut altars? You don't have none of that shit. Cultures morph, reshape, and change over time, and some fade away completely. So again, it says it is important to remember, all other things being equal, that over time, a biologically defined group could change cultural practices and or languages by adopting new customs or languages. And then a culturally defined group can change biology via intermarriage, both only limited by the socio-political milieu of the interactions. Man, there's so many nuggets in here, man. It just fights against these racist idiots. Let me go to the one. I want the one where he talks about European colonialism. Oh, I'm in the beginning of the damn book now. I think it's around page 23. Let me see. There go another good one, too. I just saw it. About the E-market on white people. Let me go to view. Let me view my bookmarks. All right, here it is here. Here it is here. So it says here, the forgetting of Africa's northern regions as Africa, although not as common in some scholarship as it once was, has something to do with a set of notions born in the era of European-sponsored human trafficking and enforced settler colonialism. So what are some of these ideas about that were born in the era of European-sponsored human trafficking and enforced settler colonialism? Because he goes into it. These include ideas about race and origins. Like we just read about, people will try to say, since your people are there today, that means they always were there. That comes from the era of European-sponsored human trafficking and enforced settler colonialism. Pure mutation. So these includes biases about race and origins, notions of isolated populations. They think all West Africans were isolated, were stuck there, which we just read paper after paper showing you that that's not the case. They have a basal Eurasian component amongst them, a third of their ancestry, right? Basal Eurasian, showing you that these people are migratory, not isolated. Beliefs about static ethnicities, right? Oh, you only have one group, that you only been one group, and that's it. Nobody else. You can't, and that's been the talking point of the Garfieldites for years. You guys come from this group, so therefore you can't worship Jesus. You can't be an Israelite. You can't be an Arab. You can't be a Moor. You can't, because they have an idea about static ethnicities and unchanging people, meaning how they are today or how they perceive them to be. Because even though we're West African descendants, most of us, but we're not anything like West African people of yesteryear, as far as culture, veneration of different deities and stuff of that nature, and language. Unchanging people. And we read the other day that this is a farce. Matter of fact, I'm going to end it with that. Typological thinking, racism, and sociology of knowledge, and nothing to do with geography, interconnecting human beings as subjects with value and agency. These guys do not believe human beings are interconnected. They look at sub-Saharan Africans as isolated. They look at black people in general as isolated and white people as being different. They're not interconnected anyway. But the genetics shows a different picture. We're all interconnected. And there are no such things, no isolated groups. All right, with that, let me go to the portion of this book that deals with highlights. I mean, it deals with haplogroup E and its phenotype. Let me see here. We got people that are haplogroup E that are pale, that are European, we got Arabian, all of the sorts. There we go, right here. So this is page 15 now. It says here, the fact is that this particular population of Afro-Asiatic speakers, he's talking about the ones with RVA8, right, in Chad, as you can see up here. It says the fact that this particular population of Afro-Asiatic speakers, although the samples are limited, usually has a higher frequency of a European/Asian lineage than Berber speakers, more northern coastal people, is the kind of new thing that Pliny was speaking about. It is indeed ironic that these, with what can be called the stereotype African facial morphology and very dark skin, are precisely those with European haplogroups, while others who phenotypically more resemble Europeans are often predominantly of the E haplogroup. So again, you cannot judge people on skin color alone, phenotypic expression, or physical traits. Because remember, genetics cut across geography and physical traits. It cut across all of that. Languages and cultures, it cut across as that. You can't pinpoint people to one certain thing or one certain culture and say, this is what you must be doing because I'm a racial essentialist. If I say all black people do X, they all have to do it. That's why you got people ask you silly ass questions. You put sugar in your grits? And if you say no, oh, then you ain't black. Depending on who you ask. Then certain people, if you say yes, you ain't black. It don't make no goddamn sense. Because we have this over-racialized thinking, this hive-mind thinking that everybody that has the same skin color or same ethnic group think the same, must be the same origins. No, we're diverse. Today's word is diverse. All right. Let me close and we'll take this book down. That book, that paper that we read the other day. Let me see if I still have it up here. And we'll close with that. That's what we'll do. We'll close that and close some of these windows down. So hopefully somebody learned something today, that we're not those forest pygmies. You know, don't let these people delimit your ancestry and try to limit you to jungle niggas in his words, right? Where is that paper at? I'm going to pull that paper up and end with that. Just closing windows, y'all. So, with that being said, let me just do this real quick. Gene flow into Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa. Make sure there it is. Let me just go here again. Go all the way down. And get to the relevant portion about changing peoples. Let me just hard search it real quick. We went over this yesterday. And pointed out a couple highlights from here. If you're part of the Genesis 49ers resource group, I put a lot of those highlights in the group. Matter of fact, I should have just went there actually. But this is the paper we covered yesterday. I'll put it here. Boom. And it was toward the conclusion. Let me get that. Let me go to the conclusion of this paper and then we'll close out. There's a connection between West and East Africa's discussion. Boom, boom, boom. Right here. Here it is here. So, as you can see, this is the paper here. And it says here, on the basis of our analysis, none of the African populations in our study has remained isolated and unchanged over the last 4,000 years. So this isolated, static people stuff does not work. It does not comport with the evidence. What is the evidence? The DNA data in your cells. You have a copy of your DNA in all your somatic and germ cells. It's that simple. It's that simple. Hibachi. Get out of here, man. Seven candlesticks up. I've been telling you niggas, it ain't a debate. It's a stick up. Gang.
I done did some shit that you ain't never did. I done saw some shit that you ain't never seen. I done been some places you ain't never been. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. Boat nigga with a 30 clip, big Glock 9 with a red beam. I done been broke, I done had money, I done had shoes. I was another team. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. Boat nigga with a 30 clip, big Glock 9 with a red beam. I done been broke, I done had money, I done had shoes. I was another team. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't saw before. Spurred a nigga in the jaw before. Took off running from the law before. I was selling OG by the dollar store. Used to get that Reggie from Hilario. That was middle school, like in 6th grade. I was cutting the Philly with a switchblade. I knew I was destined for a big play. I knew I was destined for a mixtape. I been kicking flavor since the talent show. Had a fully loaded automatic flow. What's a fully loaded automatic flow? When I spit the verses like a calico. Watch me spit the verse like a calico. Running let your mama and your daddy know. 7 shots. I am something to run and tell about. They thought I was smoking airplane gas cause I'm jumping fly in the helicopter. 800 for the Louis shades up in North Park just to look smart. Money caller with the T-top on the lawn horse and the push start. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. 4 nickel with a 30 clip. Big Glock 9 with a red beam. I done been broke. I done had money. I done had shoot out with the other team. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. 4 nickel with a 30 clip. Big Glock 9 with a red beam. I done been broke. I done had money. I done had shoot out with the other team.
Plenty fuck, nigga. No man, give it up, nigga. Shot it out, let it bust, hit him. Did it all for a check killer. I was broke, I was sick, digging licks in the brick with a stick. Have a split, serving nicks to a zip. Take a drill, 30 big boys in a big clip. Out of town, serving at the quick trip. Ain't no hoe, this fofo, gon' blow. My grind big, you a small joke. I'm still into that mud, that wet dirt, give a fuck. I did the most in these damn streets, having news in these back streets. Ain't no nigga real like me. Hard time made a still G. Serving ain't just to eat. Mama called it cause the work cheap. Sucker niggas wanna murk me. Had to get it, had to go see. Let these niggas know it ain't peace. I'm a damn fool if you want this.
I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. 4 nickel with a 30 clip. Big Glock 9 with a red beam. I done been broke. I done had money. I done had shoot out with the other team. I done did some shit that you ain't never did. Saw some shit that you ain't never seen. Been some places you ain't never been. Sip, drink, you don't never lean. 4 nickel with a 30 clip. Big Glock 9 with